Hello, my name's Rebecca Whitehead and I'm the Lettings Director here at Gascoigne Halman. I've been in the industry for around 25 years and I've been with Gascoigne Halman for 11 of those years. And today we are going to talk about the recently enforced Renters' Rights Act. I'm here with my colleague Hannah Farrington. Hi, Hannah.
Hello, I'm Hannah Farrington. Thank you for the introduction. I am the Head of Property Management and I have been in the industry for about 15 years now, maybe 20. And I've been with Gascoigne Halman for 10 years. And I just wanted to have a bit of a chat with you about the Renters' Rights Act.
It's finally an act. The long-awaited act is finally here. Let's go.
Can you remind me, what is the Renters' Rights Act?
It's been so long, I'm not sure I can still tell you, Hannah. So the Renters' Rights, the whole process of this Renters' Rights Act started quite a few years ago, if you remember, and it was called the Renters' Reform Bill at that point. And that was actually back when we had a Conservative government, not a Labour government. And this has now come through and come into fruition. 25th of October, this actually became legislation. So that's really good news for us because I think the biggest problem with legislative change is the delay and the anticipation and the small print and the myths that we hear as headlines. So hopefully we can get through a load of that kind of stuff today. I think it's really important that we talk facts, we talk headlines. How's it going to affect agents? How's it going to affect tenants? And how is it going to affect landlords? So what is it? So this whole piece of legislation has come about to protect tenants from, unfortunately, rogue landlords, from living in adverse conditions and from having a lack of security of tenure, because that really has been a problem in the private rental sector. Now, as Gascoigne Halman, they're not really issues that we tend to deal with on a daily basis. And I think a really key thing I want to say to all of our landlords is not one of your properties is a property that's not going to meet the legislation changes. So don't panic about those things. You know, this really is aimed at some terrible situations that we've seen. That said, there are some pretty fundamental changes. In fact, the biggest changes that we're going to see in my 25 years.
Okay, should we do some myth busting then and get to the nitty gritty? So I have heard that everything's going to become a periodic tenancy. What is a periodic tenancy? How much notice will the tenants have to give?
So everything will become a periodic tenancy. So currently in England, I nearly said the United Kingdom, but legislation is different in Scotland and Wales. So in England, you can currently have a couple of different types of tenancy. First of all, you can have an assured short hold tenancy, which is a fixed term. And secondly, that could be fixed term or periodic. And secondly, you can have a non-Housing Act tenancy. Now, the non-Housing Act is going to remain the same. But what's going to happen is all assured short hold tenancies will become a periodic tenancy. So that means from day one, it will be on a month by month basis. There will be no fixed term. So usually at the moment, what would happen is we would ring you as a landlord and say, we found you a tenant. Would you like to do it on a 6 months, a 12 months? What kind of term would you like to attach to that tenancy? Minimum being 6 months, maximum being 3 years. That won't happen any longer. We will still ask the tenants what are their intentions, but it will be periodic from day one.
And how much notice will a tenant have to give?
So at the moment, a tenant has to give 1 month's notice. What will happen once the legislation is effective is a tenant will have to give 2 months' notice. So I already know your next question. Can a tenant give notice on the day they move in? Yep, they can give notice on the day they move in. What would happen in that scenario? The notice would take effect from the next rent due date. They would give 2 months' notice. So in effect, that very minimum worst case scenario is that tenancy would be 3 months. But I think we have to ask an important question. Why would a tenant do that? So why would a tenant move into a rental property for a 3-month period? I don't think they would plan to do it. Why would they? I can't think of scenarios in which they would. More importantly, this has already been passed in Scotland for a number of years, and that isn't something that suddenly happened in the main. Now, what may happen is a tenant may move in and the property might not be what they expected. And if that's the case, then perhaps they would move out. But actually, that does happen from time to time now. It might be that the tenant didn't view the property themselves and they've moved in and all of a sudden it's not quite what they thought. We would encourage to let them move out anyway.
So with regard to the going on to periodic tenancies, and you're saying there's a very slight chance that somebody will move into a property and it not be what they expect. How are we as an agent gonna help stop that from happening?
That's a really good question. I think what we're going to have to look at is the tenant selection. So tenant selection has always been important. Always, always. it's not hard to find a tenant. It's hard to find the right tenant. So first of all, we still need to know what you want and what you want as a landlord. You may only want to rent the property out for 12 months. And the reason for that is you might want to then sell it, or you might then be wanting to move back in yourself. And if that's the situation, we need to find you a tenant that meets that requirement. We need to work between the two parties and ask the right questions. Now, what's not going to be able to happen is if a tenant changes their mind, we're not going to be able to hold them to it. But most tenants do have clear expectations, and actually they're not going to want to move into a property that doesn't suit their needs. That's the whole point. So we really are going to be having to ask those questions, and tenant selection is going to be absolutely key.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in today, and please follow us on our YouTube channel for the next part of the series.